Hey everybody, welcome to week 2. I'm glad you're here. I hope you have your guidebook with you, and I want to remind you to bring it with you to church on Sundays and utilize it during this series. Today, we're talking about something powerful and deeply personal. You have been chosen by God. Not by accident, not randomly. God has placed you where you are for a purpose, and He's asking you to be all in with your heart, your time, your influence, and your resources to serve Him in the world today. We'll see this clearly through the story of Esther, but we'll also look at what it means for us right now in our jobs, families, churches, and communities. There are 4 lessons I'd like us to focus on. Lesson 1, God chooses ordinary people for extraordinary purposes. Esther was just a young woman, orphaned and raised by her cousin Mordecai. God chose her for something massive, to stand in the gap and save her people. Esther 4:14 is probably the most recognized passage in the book of Esther. It's Mordecai's famous words, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." She didn't plan it. She didn't feel qualified, but God positioned her. In the book of Exodus, while he was tending sheep, Moses was chosen by God to lead the Israelites out of slavery. As we read Exodus chapters 3 and 4, we see Moses' response was much like ours would be. Who, me? What if? But God saw something different. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is another example of someone chosen by God, and they went all in for the mission. Can you imagine the angst Mary must have felt early on in her pregnancy? Yet her response was, "Let it be to me as you have said." And finally, in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, the disciples are described as unschooled ordinary men, but they had been with Jesus. God often chooses people not because they're the strongest or most talented, but because they're willing. God chooses ordinary people for extraordinary purposes. Lesson 2, saying yes and going all in for God requires risk, faith, and obedience. Esther risked everything, her status, her comfort, even her life. Yet look at her response in Esther 4:16. "If I perish, I perish." That's the moment she went all in. She risked it all. Abraham left everything to follow God, and he didn't have all the details either. But he kept going, even when he and his family were in great danger. Abraham might not have had all the details, but what he did have was faith and obedience. You can read about that in Genesis chapter 12. The disciple Peter stepped out of the boat in the familiar walking on the water experience found in Matthew chapter 14. Yeah, he suffered a little, but in the end, Jesus used that experience to teach Peter and the rest of the disciples that if they were going to go all in with Jesus, it would be risky and require faith and obedience. And in Philippians chapter 3, we are reminded of the power and prestige the Apostle Paul gave up to follow Jesus. When you believe God has chosen you, you can walk boldly, even into the unknown. Being chosen doesn't mean the path is easy, it means the path is worth it. Has your faith been worth it? How? Talk about that in your group. Lesson 3, your yes opens the door to God's power and purpose. Because of Esther's courage, the entire Jewish nation was saved. God used her yes to change history. You can read about that in Esther chapter 8. Noah's obedience led to a preserved humanity. David's courage to face Goliath changed the future of Israel. And the greatest yes of all, Jesus' yes in the Garden of Gethsemane in Luke chapter 22, led to the redemption of the world. Our faith in God and saying yes to His purpose in our life is never just about us. God wants our faith to have impact on the world around us. God may not call you to a palace or a platform, but He has positioned you for where you are for His purposes. Your job, your family, school, neighborhood, your everyday life, that's your mission field. Lesson 4, being chosen by God is a calling to live generously. Generosity is giving what God has given you to bless others, whether that's your time, your resources, or your very self. Like Esther, whose bold generosity and willingness to risk everything led to the saving of her people, we are called to step forward in faith. True generosity always costs something because it's an act of surrender and trust. It says, "God, everything I have is yours. Use it how you will." Being all in for God means offering every part of our lives for His purposes. Generosity isn't just about giving something away. It's about giving yourself completely to God's plan. Ask yourself, where has God placed you? Who might be blessed by your yes? Giving your time to someone in need, giving your voice to speak up for the vulnerable, giving your resources to support God's work, giving your talents to build others up. Esther gave what no one else could give. You have something no one else can offer either, and God can do amazing things through that. In Mark chapter 12, the widow gave 2 small coins and Jesus praised her. In John chapter 6, a boy gave 5 loaves and 2 fish, and Jesus fed a multitude. And in Acts chapter 4, the early church shared everything, and no one was in need. When you give God what's in your hands, He uses it to change the world. Like Esther, may we live with courage, faith, and generosity, trusting that God will use what we offer to bless the world. In closing, God's not asking for perfection. He's asking for surrender. Like Esther, your decision to say yes may bless people you'll never even meet. Wherever God has placed you, you are there for such a time as this. Be all in.